Yeah, so first of all, hello everybody who hasn't met me before. My name's George Blundell. I'm the product manager on the Quality Modeler product. So obviously new role for me. So I'll be presenting these product updates going forward. Also probably be meeting a few of you in web meetings or in person if we ever want to talk about new updates to Modeler and any ideas that you've got. Feel free to reach out to me through your whoever your curiosity representative is. So I'm going to run through a couple of the core updates that we put through into Quality Modeler over the past few weeks. Now, we've had a pretty exciting month or two, really, with the release of our Modeler AI bolt-on. So this basically has a series of different AI components within it, allows us to build models faster. It kind of keeps the AI in the loop, really, being able to ask the AI questions about how good my particular model is, about where I could improve it. There's also lots of new capabilities for building models. So I'm going to show off a couple of things. There's this sort of text-based model building, as well as uploading and importing full requirement documents into your models to build out kind of these end-to-end suites. Now onto the why. I mean, really, everything that we're doing with AI is to help improve and increase the positive impacts of modeling. So we're actually helping you model faster, improve the quality of the models that are being built, so that then all of the different assets generated by your models, whether they be user stories, test cases, automation scripts, are better as a result. So let me hop over into the products. I'm just going to give you a whiz around some of those Modeler AI features. The first place is in our import menu. So in the Explorer on the right-hand side, if you go to the import, go to more, I just type in AI, you can see the two pieces of functionality in here. The first piece is, you may have seen this before, it's all around kind of text-based requirements and feeding those into your, producing models from them. So a few examples here. I'm just going to pick up this booking a flight. If I enter that text, hit generate model, that's going to go away. It sends the prompt to the AI, and then produces a model out of the back of it. So this is really useful if you've got those sort of text-based requirements and you want to just get started quickly with it. While that goes, I'll also show you around some of the document importer as well. So this is the one that we're particularly proud of, and is sort of really impressive, I think. It allows us to take requirements documents and convert those, whether they be sort of 10 or 20 pages, into modeled flow charts. So for this example, I'm going to come in, select my document. I'll just pick up a mobile bank. This one has sort of 10 or 15 different pages with a few thousand words in, right? So if I hit next, the first thing that happens is it gives us a model plan. Now, this is basically giving you an overview of the models that Modeler AI wants to build, and a bit of information as to what within those models. So you'll see, for example, the first model here is around user authentication, and it pulled out a little bit of information about that process, right? So it's all about logging in with username, password, and different authentication methods. If I scroll down, you'll see, I think it's built like 6 or 7 models here. Now, what I can do is also I can map these to existing models as well. So if I hit next, that's going to go away. It's going to take that model plan and create my models. So you'll see here that we have 6 or 7 models that's created. I can open up each of these individually and kind of review what the model has built. So the first one we're going to look at is around the fund transfers. A second to open up. Cool. So inside here, you see there's quite a lot of information that the AI has pulled out of those documents. You'll see if we zoom in a little bit here, we've got things like, okay, well, what's the transfer type? Is it between banks or is it just within the same bank? And you can see there's different logic in here around the limits for transfers. So does it exceed the limit? If so, then we have some kind of error handling. If it doesn't, then we confirm and then move on to the rest. So you'll see, this is pretty powerful, really. It's a huge accelerator, especially if you have existing assets that you want to build models from. And also in terms of the quality of the models as well. I mean, something that we've worked quite a lot on here is to actually make sure it's building models that are good, right? They follow kind of modeling standards and like those modeling best practices that I'm sure any of our modeler customers are aware that we have. The next stage here is once we've got all of these different generated models, we can then come in and build an end-to-end process model. So again, I'll hit next, let that go away and do its thing. Let's see what this is doing. There we go. So then this builds our mobile banking application end-to-end process flow. So what this does is it takes a look at all of those models it's created, and it decides, okay, how can I bring these together into an end-to-end process? So depending on what type of requirement and what type of system you're working with, you might get different responses. So in here, you'll see I've got lots of these different subflows. The first one here is our user authentication. If I expand that, you'll see that it's got all of our logic that's been created by the AI related to authentications, whether we need 2 factors, password resets, etc., etc. Then if we come back, you'll see that we're kind of going through each of these different items in sequence. So first of all, I'm going to do some account management, then I want to transfer, check the transaction history, etc., etc. Once you're here, then you have access to all of the classic modeler features like coming in, generating test cases, generating automation scripts, user stories, whatever you want from this. Now, along the way, we also have sort of these co-pilot IntelliAgents. Now, these are basically your modeling assistants. So they're designed to be an AI that you can ask if you're not sure about what you should do next, or if you need ideas about what you should insert into your model. So for example, well, I can come into my Copilot screen here, and you'll see that we have a series of different buttons. So some of these are a model review, where I can ask Copilot to go away, take a look at my model, review it, and then give me some feedback based off of what it knows about model-based testing and model-based design, and then suggest some fixes. So for example, the first thing here is it's going to evaluate the structure. It's giving me a compliment here. Overall, the structure is logically organized, etc., etc. It will do some stuff around completeness, whether it's applicable for model-based test and design, error handling, etc., etc. As well as that, we've also got these specific agents that cover off specific scenarios. So the first agent I'll talk about is the accessibility agent. What this will do is it will help you identify any missing scenarios specifically related to accessibility. So that's things like, are buttons showing up in a way that a colorblind person could see them? Is the contrast okay, etc., etc. So if I look here, it's got a few different scenarios that it suggested around focus, around contrast, color check, navigability. Now, if I click on one of these, what the AI is going to do is it's going to apply that feedback to the model. So you'll see now I'm actually doing an update model where we're looking for some keyboard navigability, where we need to verify that all of the components are navigable using the keyboard. Now you'll see as I'm talking, the model has been updated. We've added a series of different nodes in here. All of these are related then to checking the navigability related to the keyboard. So you'll see that there's sort of decision here where if it's not accessible, then I'm going to show an alert, and then there's some error handling. If it is accessible, then we can kind of continue on with our model, and we're perfectly happy. If we look through the different prompts, there's lots of these different agents related to accessibility, compliance. My favorite one to use at the moment is around requirement gap. So that will actually help you figure out if there's any missing scenarios in the model. Missing scenarios agent. Again, that will go away and it will come back with 6 or 7 different things that the AI thinks that you missed. So, for example, we haven't considered what happens if I try to attempt a transfer from a frozen bank account. Is there insufficient permissions? Again, I can click on that, it will go away, and it will make some edits to the model based off of what feedback it initially gave. So yeah, we're pretty excited about the way that the product is going in terms of all of the different new AI features. If you want to try it out, just let us know. Your representative can help you set up the environment. If you need to connect to a specific large language model, then we can help you with that as well. But yeah, really exciting. The last thing I want to just mention now is the UI update. So this has been applied in our previous release at the end of May. But basically, you'll now see an updated look and feel to all of the different menu structures. As I flick through, you'll see that we've got updates all around. So project screens, Explorer. I think it brings it makes it look a lot more modern than it was. So we're very happy as well with the look and feel of the application. We've also got a lot more. So as always, you can check the knowledge base for all of the different release notes. They will have a little video, and you'll see James talking to a few of the new features in there also. And then always follow James on LinkedIn. He's posting a lot at the moment around some of our kind of new website messaging, looking about various aspects of quality, inner loop, outer loop testing, lots of interesting stuff there. So I'd have a look at James's LinkedIn as well. But yeah, that's me. Thanks everyone. If you have any questions, feel free to just ping me directly. I'll be able to answer anything that you've got, and I'll hand over to Huw.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, all good.
Select the entire screen. Okie doke. So let's just make sure you guys can see that.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So let's crack on. Okay, so this is a fairly massive new release. We've been working on this in the background for probably about 3 or 4 months now, but it's all kind of rolled out into one release, and then there's going to be some kind of iterative releases on top of it for a little while, just kind of hardening up doing a little bit of tidy up, a few accelerators, etc. And then we'll probably get back into some more big stuff around about, I guess, September time. So first one, vastly improved data generation, micro help preview, and you now do not need to go onto Windows to do anything with data generation. It's all done through the UI. When we use it, obviously, to create sophisticated test data. So let's go and look at, let's look maybe this one here. So if you, this is a data activity, we're playing around with an address. This is actually part of a message, which I'll get into in a little bit. But what you'll see here is, over here, we've now basically pulled in all of the functions inside Modeler here. You can do horizontal and vertical. So if you wanted to have 4 addresses, you would just switch to horizontal and just copy down the data that's changed between them. So you know, it just means that you can have, maybe I'm trying to create 3 or 4 very specific order combinations. You can actually almost just type them directly in here. If you go into the data editor, you'll now see, so if we come in here and we do, you know, random helper, and you come in here, let's just do something like city. Here we go. Sorry, I'm just slightly slow. So here you'll have basically all of the help, micro help, which is all context based on the type of the activity, the type of the column that you're dealing with, and it will kind of validate it, etc., etc. If we just clear what's there for the moment, and maybe just come in and put city, and then what we have is a preview server, which will actually go off and run it and validate it from within inside the editor. So it's found, so I guess that's somewhere in Norway. So it's much more sophisticated. If you come in here, there's a whole bunch of different accelerators that you will see, both on the table level and on the column level. You can convert things to parameters, etc., etc. If you go back to the activity, what you can also do is, once you're sort of happy with your rule set, like so, you're just going to come in and say, oh, that looks pretty good. I just want to see what it would roughly look like. You can run what we call a validation preview. That will then go off. I won't run it for now, but basically that will go off and give you an idea of what all the resolved values would look like. It will connect to your target databases and source databases and actually build it all up for you. And that's just a kind of a sort of a much nicer way of being able to validate it, rather than sort of having to wait until the whole thing's been published and then go back and change it. So that's the first thing. The other thing then is, what you'll do is say, well, once I'm happy, what we're going to do is build, the way that we do data gen is we co-generate VIP flows, and all we're going to do is just rebuild a flow. That flow then becomes, in effect, an executable, and that executable, when it's running, is obviously much faster. And then you just click on execute, and that will build that flow. And what you'll see is it will appear inside the data activity, like so. And then obviously you've then got your submission form to be able to go off and fire that generate data generation off directly. Okay, so there's lots and lots of stuff in there. There's micro help, there's examples, context sensitive stuff. You know, it really is much more powerful now. And we'll continue to add in additional stuff. You can add in your own custom functions into it, and they will just appear within the same framework as well. So that's the first thing. Let's look at the next one. Okay, so this is, if we take a look at, let's look at this one here. So this is basically, I'm creating a load of customers, orders, and items in this one, you know, for our OT system, which is what we use for training. Now, what you can do is you create the rule set just like you normally would, just define everything. You can run your previews, make sure everything's looking good. But then when you come to build the subset, what you'll see is there's a new option now, which is standard data generation is just going to, in effect, generate the data directly into a database. But there's a couple of new options here, which is generate data into CSVs for loading later. Now, what we'll do is we use the same underlying definition of the rule set and the flow to extract the data, but instead of pushing the data directly into a database, we create CSVs. Obviously, if we're doing a lot of data, we can do tons and tons of data in parallel. This is if you're going to do high volume data. Actually doing individual inserts is quite slow. So that's really the thing that takes the time when it comes to, you know, populating millions of rows of data. So you can generate the data into CSVs for loading later. Once you've generated those CSVs, you can then load them in, and we use what's called a bulk copy protocol, which is much faster, and that will load in millions of rows in seconds. So that's kind of one of the uses of that. Now, there's a couple of reasons for this. High volume data using bulk upload is much faster, and also for the creation of data for external systems. So if you're, if you're sending data off to someone else, or you just need to create data for the QA team or something like that, you can just ship them basically the CSVs with, a bunch of basically the load form as well, and that's really all they need, and then they could just load that data up into the system. So that's kind of an additional nice feature on the data generation now. Okay, now subsets. I'm just going to go there. There's quite a lot of stuff to cover today, so I'm going to show you. So I'm just going to go into a pipeline. Let's just look at this pipeline here. Now this is a little pipeline. If I just click on expanded that, I'll just expand up in a second. So basically this is an example of our kind of pipeline, which I think I talked about last time. Now this is getting more and more sophisticated. Now if we go and look at what's happening with the subset. So what we're doing is we're validating some data in our source system. We're then running a subset. And then after the subset, we are doing some generation, we're doing some validation, and we're also doing some masking, I believe, as well. Yeah. So we're doing quite a lot of stuff in here, but the thing I'm going to focus on is the subset. Now, if we go and look at, let's just look at the rule set version. So now subsetting basically allows you to start somewhere, and that could be 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 tables, and then we'll march across the database looking for data to pull out a smaller set of data. Okay, so I want just a particular group of products and everything to do with them, and that will then come out. Now we have this ability to define things as driving tables and subsetting tables. Before, this was all done in lists, and it was kind of a little difficult to use. And now what we've also done is allowed you to define, when you march across a database, that sometimes you end up going back up. So if you go up to a category and then you come back down from the category, you could end up sort of bringing back the whole database. So what we can do is allow you to clip it off. And that's where you just say active from parent, active from child, and you turn them off and on. If anything is not included, you can also pick data randomly from the parent or sequentially from a parent as well. So if there is some data there that you need to incorporate, you can just add that in as well. So in this case, we're going to be just randomly picking product. Yes, this is customers with a summary table. Yeah, that's right. So if you go and also look at the entity relationship diagram, you can actually define this, which is a much nicer way to be able to do it inside the entity diagrammer. So it's only when you actually start running, when you're actually trying to subset, a relatively sophisticated, database with, many tables, it's quite difficult to get your head around it. So the entity diagram is very good because you can see where, I'm coming from here, I'm going down there, then I'm going over here, then I'm coming back up here. But what you can also do in here is you can then, if you click on this, you can actually turn the active from parent and active from child off as well within here. So we've allowed you to make those changes from inside the subset editor, which is quite powerful and a lot more sort of easy to get your head around, I suppose. That's probably the way to think about that. Okay, so that's that. Let's move on to the ability to convert a data gen activity in a clone into a clone and a mask. And this is kind of so let me just actually show you about the reasons to do this. Now, the reason to do this is I want to create multiple copies of rare data, a little bit like subsetting. Now, subsetting will just pull stuff out, and it will create another copy of it somewhere else. Now, with the advantage of data gen, it's more defined to be more like fine finger control. I want to pull out a specific supplier, and I want to clone it. And I want to create multiple copies of that supplier because they're very interesting. They've got lots of interesting activity going on with them. And I want there's 7 developers, and I want each one to have their own supplier. But we'll have different sets of keys, but we will have basically the same set of data. So to create multiple copies of rare data, to extract specific subsets of data from production, mask, and to create in development environments, quite often it's very difficult to recreate a bug. And actually you have a simple, you have bug request coming through, it's fairly important. If the amount of time it takes for you to recreate the data in the development environment can be quite hard, quite a long time. And also, once you've done it by hand or even with data gen, you're never actually sure that it's very similar to the data that you've actually got that caused the bug in production. So what you can do is just pull out that specific cost code or the payment plan or whatever it is, and pull that out and move it into maybe a repair environment. Now, the advantage of this is we can mask it as we move in, or you just put it into like a secure environment, so you can actually just look at it and rerun it and test it in isolation. So it's a very powerful piece of functionality, very, very useful. It also means that you can pull out data from, say, QA1 and move it into QA2 without disrupting QA2. The big problem when you try and copy data from one environment to another is that people are generally working in that environment already. They might have set up a whole bunch of dev work that's in flight, or tests or automation scripts are running, and then suddenly you just flatten it, and that just causes carnage, whereas this is a much simpler way of being able to do that. Now, if we look at the supplier clone activity, we've added in a new basically rule set accelerator, and this will convert just a regular generate. If you run this, there's convert a rule set to a clone. Now, this is just one of the first ones that we're working on. There's other things that we can add in here as well. And basically what I'm doing is basically saying I want to extract, and in this case, we're extracting some suppliers. If we look at, let's go and look at their suppliers, definition. I should be able to do it with the rule set, actually. If we look at the diagram, so basically, we've got suppliers, supplier categories, archives, etc. And what we want to do is to basically recreate these. This is 5 tables. Normally, it could be, could be up to 10, 20, 30 tables in a sort of typical user scenario. And what we'll do is we'll just basically, when we run that job, it'll say, well, give me, in this case, we're looking for supplier category ID. I want to pull out category I2. Now, what will happen is that will, similar to subset, it will kind of march across the database. So here we've got our category IDs 2s. It's pulled them out, and it's generated them as category ID 10. Okay, it's given them all different IDs. And what I've done in the generator, as I've actually if we go back and look at the generation rule set for supplier, I've pulled out, so if you look in here, you'll see we've pulled out the data from the source, which is just called var existing suppliers, and then we've just added in dash clone. Or you could basically, if you're thinking about masking, you could put in new addresses. If you've got some very slightly suspect mask data in one environment, what you could do is kind of remask it, if you like, by using this approach and just move it to another environment as well. So that's maybe another added benefit as well. So it's very powerful. I'm a big fan of this. I think it's a very useful way. And once you let your developers and testers and users know about this, hopefully they're going to get pretty excited by it. Okay, so creating messages. A lot of you will be very familiar with our template approach, which is very powerful, but it uses kind of a scriban language. The problem with that is you're creating code. As soon as people start editing that code, you kind of lose that. You change your rule set, and you've got to manually go back and change the code, so you get that you're sort of losing the link to it. Now, what we do with this, this is just generating. If we look at our pipeline, I'm creating some XML for a postal message. Now, what we'll do is we will sorry, maybe just move back slightly. Go to the address. And let's go to the definition. So you scan in your XML or your JSON or your Avro file or whatever it is like that. What we'll then automatically do for you is we will then we will convert that into a set of, first of all, we group the tables together. Now you can, this is just, putting it into logical groups is much easier. So you might be interested in, I don't know, payments or something like that, or your trades or something like that. You really kind of think of those together to hang together. Now, what you can do, if the first thing to do before you even start actually building a message is to group the kind of segments. So here we've got various different envelopes. This is the kind of core envelope, and then we've got labels, and then with that we've got addresses, and these are basically repeating groups within them. So that gives you great control. It also allows you to maybe have one person who's very familiar with, say, something like payments bankruptcies or something like that. And what they could do is they could just work on that, this in effect generator. That generator would then be available. You make it, parameterize it up, make it very sophisticated, and then other people who need to create messages with similar type concepts can actually then go off and build those out. Now, so once we've got our message, sorry, let me just go back to the pipeline. So we have our pipeline. Now, in effect, what we're doing is we're creating in this case, four. If we're looking at other messages, message structures like the ISOs, some of those type messages, you could be looking at maybe 20 or 30 different groups of data. So you've got all of these. What we do is we, in effect, push that data out and we put it into a micro DB. So we instantiate it into a database, and then we then reassemble that out into your XML or your JSON or other formats, to be able to recreate that data. So it's a very, very sophisticated and powerful way of being able to generate messages, complex payloads. When we do the execute, so what you'll see is how many envelopes do I want, and then here what we've got is we can define at each one of these levels. So let's look at this one. These are all the different things, and you can say I want to expose that in the form, I want to generate labels, and I want to set a minimum maximum. So allowing you in effect to control the looping. Obviously, once you've done that, you could then parameterize this all up, and you can model out the variations. So I want to create using modeling. You may be using some of the AI stuff to create me a rich set of variations of messages to make sure that I have each one is like a snowflake. Each one has a different set of variables, parameters, types, etc., etc. So. And so if we go back to this, so here I'm basically saying 5. How many label characteristics do I want? I'm going to go fairly high on this one. How many recipient addresses? Now, they have, there's an initial address and maybe so you can basically set as many of these as you want and control all the looping within them. And, for each one of these, it will in effect sort of say for the first one, I'm doing 3, the second one, I'm doing 1, this one, and the third one, I'm doing this one. So it's a very sort of easy way of being able to create very complex messages. We're doing a lot of work on this, and this will evolve dramatically over time, okay, because as messages can be and payloads. This would also create the same data would then be pushing into an API. Okay. Right. Let's have a look. 6. Messages. Okay. Sorry. On this one, extract much more sophisticated payloads. Right. So this one, a local microDB is now being shipped. So what you'll see is that we will actually ship a new Docker container, which actually contains. You can create your own sort of databases in it. You create Postgres databases, MySQL databases, etc. We're going to put a little portal on the front of it. At the moment, what we've done just up front, just so that you can kind of see what's going on, is that you can actually look at the data directly. So if you're generating messages into, maybe have a look at the suppliers or something like that. So that will now directly from within here. You don't have to install, one of the many PG admins or SQL servers, etc. So you can actually have a look at the data. This will become much more sophisticated over time, but we've just made sure that we just plumbed it in. Now, if you look at what that means it means you can mine and store data to support ETD activities. So that could be if you're trying to hunt for data and you need to go and mine data from an ERP system, from a database, etc., running some reports. We can then populate those into a central location rather than have to go and try and find a DBA to allocate you some data and allocate you a database, and then it goes into backup and security and all that kind of stuff, etc. Whereas all you're really doing is just I'm using it in my development environment to summarize the data that is available within that environment, and then that's what I'm going to use for maybe my finds and allocates. This is also a useful one. You could use it to store messages. So I talked about this ability to generate messages into a database, and that database then goes out as regular whatever JSON structures or whatever. But what you could also do is you could then, once that data is created, it still persists in that database, so you can recreate it whenever you want. You could clone it. You could also import messages that already exist. So you might already have a pack of, 10,000 messages that exist in your world. And what we can do is push those into a database, as opposed to storing them as files. You can then regenerate them, But when you regenerate them, you might want to make some changes to them. You might want to adjust the dates, etc. You can clone them. So it's a very, very powerful way of being able to support these complex payloads, to make them much more flexible, to fit them into DevOps pipelines, to support developers, to help connect the inner loop with the outer loop. Okay, so that's kind of a powerful little thing there. Okay, there's one other thing that we've put in as well, which is quite, for those of you familiar with masking, we had this concept of defaults. Now, defaults allow you to make changes across to all of the rule sets. So this is what I want to do to the data. I want to mask the data, I want to generate the data, etc. So what you can do is, if we take a look at I don't know, some like ISO messages. So basically what we have here is we have a the ability. So actually, let me just create a new one. It's pretty easier. Oh, sorry, these are defaults. Oh, shouldn't be doing defaults. Let me go and pick one of mine. This one here. Sorry. You do a default, and what you can do is say, I want a name that contains something, plus I want it to the source came from pre-processing, from validation, etc., from definition defaults. So it allows, and then when we do it, we want to be able to put in a generation rule, etc., etc. So it means that whenever you're doing data generation, probably specifically, and you do a really nice, neat function, and you say, well, this actually applies to all ISO messages, or it applies to all of my credit messages, etc. You can actually store that as a rule that can then be applied across. Now, what you don't want to do, you want to make sure that the current value source is not manual change. So you can come in and say, go off and change all my rule sets to have a specific generation rule, unless someone's manually changed it, and then I'm just going to leave it alone. So, you can do very, very sophisticated types of changes across there, and it means that any work you do can be applied across teams. If someone's, so if someone's already done this work, it's then you just store it as these default rule sets. So very useful feature, and hopefully you kind of enjoy using that. So I think that's about it from what I've got, Mantas. So
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you, Huw. I'll take over now. Cool. So, yeah, thank you, Huw. Thank you, George, for presenting. That kind of leads us to the Q&A. And I'll start off, sorry about that, but I'll start off with the question for George. So George, you showed off a lot of the AI updates, the UI updates, and you said reach out to the Curiosity representative. Are these updates, are they included? Is that all someone has to do? Are they available for all types of installs of Modeler and ETD? Does that, so cloud, on premise? If you could give me a few more details on that.
Yeah, sure. So I guess by default, it's disabled on people's workspaces, but it's available if you're on cloud, on premise, wherever you have our software installed. Just talk to whoever your point of contact is about enabling it and sort of getting your hands on it.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. See, so yeah, I'll say if anyone has questions, please, leave them in the chat. That'll be the private or the public chat in the top right-hand side of your screen. If not, I think, so we got a question. Thank you so much. So this one's for you, Huw. Is test data generation available out of the box? You muted, Huw.
I am indeed. Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. So does that require any setup, or just connect your database and
connect the database, scan the structures, scan the data if you want to. validate it. Sorry, what the first thing to do is just, we usually scan the data looking for implied relationships, because you know, you have foreign keys, but not all databases have foreign keys they shouldn't have. We will then help you build a really nice entity model. You can then say, right, let's start build up our data generation rules steadily over time. You start pushing data in, then you start parameterizing it, you make it more and more sophisticated, and bingo, you're suddenly in the world of synthetic data gen.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you. So yeah, if there's not any more questions, I think, you know, we can wrap it up today and make it short and sweet. So yeah, with that said, you know, that's all the updates we have for today. You know, thanks again for everyone for your joining, and to my colleagues for the great presentation. If you'd like to carry on the conversation following this product update, there are a number of ways you can get in touch. If you'd like to learn more or still have questions, please get in touch with either George or Huw via email. If you know a colleague who might be interested in our product updates, then share the recording and future updates with them. And finally, please follow Curiosity on LinkedIn and Twitter, or visit our website to stay up to date with our latest updates and all things Curiosity. So all of these links and slides will be shared with you in a follow-up email tomorrow afternoon. And the details for our upcoming Q3 2024 product update webinar will also be shared soon. So please look out for that. So I think all that remains to be said is, you know, huge thank you to everyone for joining, and a massive thank you to George and Huw for presenting today. See you in our next product update webinar.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.